is located in the lower extremities. So you click on lower extremities. Now we have this Forefoot protocol. Again, the one at Tempe might be a little different, but the slice positions are the same, ish. Ooh, 35% power, huh? Okay, all right, so here we have the controls for the Scout, and if you see something, I know I put the coil directly in ISO center, so you see where it says R50. Well, I can just delete that and hit, oops, what did I just do? 0, so that I just get rid of that completely, okay? Because there's no sense having it centered to the left or the right if it's in the middle of the bore. All right, 32 is a pretty decent size for a foot, the field of view for a Scout. If you go down into like the 25s, you're probably not going to fit the whole foot on there, okay? And if somebody has a really huge foot, you can go even a little higher if you want to, but you don't see those too often. So we're going to save the prescription. Okay, this first scan is about 45 seconds long. Please hold still. All right. Let me turn that down since we're recording. All right, so on the Scout view, I want to make sure that I have, on the axial view, I want to have the toes. I want to have the heel. All right, so I've got both of those. The sagittal, I want to be able to see the whole foot, including the ankle joint. They refer to that as the mortise right there, the ankle joint, the toes, and the heel. And on the coronal view, I'd like to get as much of it as I can. I especially want to get to the toes or very close. All right, that's going to get, if I have only the hind foot, then I'm going to want to redo the Scout and have scans a little bit more anterior. All right, so we go do so I'm happy with the Scout. I'm going to go to do the calibration. Again, at Tempe, they don't have this. Okay, this scan's about 20 seconds long. All right, the first scan is a sagittal. And for a forefoot, the foot itself has two different planes, depending upon whether you're doing a forefoot versus a hind foot. The forefoot has an angle that angles with the arch, whereas the hind foot does not. And I'll show you what I mean by that. You see here, the hind foot, in this case, is pretty much straight up and down. There's the ankle joint. This is pretty much straight up and down. But the forefoot has an angle, I'd say something like this. It's about 30 degrees this way, what you're going to want to scan. Okay, so it's different. You don't want to make the mistake of scanning the forefoot and the hind foot the same way. So I'm going to angle, I'm going to throw down, I threw down in the coronal plane. It's fine. And then, so what I do is I just want to angle about to this right here. So I'm going through all the metatarsals in about the mid-arch. I don't want to do it too high up on the arch, like right here, but I also don't want to do it down on the plane of the toes, which flattens out. So about mid-arch is where I want to angle with. And then I want to angle here, I just want to find the plane of the, it's kind of hard because you don't really appreciate the metatarsals coming in, their angulation. You just kind of have to angle with the foot, something like that. There's no line like the Falks where you could say it's exactly this. You just see the foot and and then just kind of divide it in half right down the middle like that. So something like that. And then you come over here, and I want to find the great toe. There's, I'd say that 2/3 of the people, their great toe is the longest toe that you have to watch for. Every so often, somebody will have that second toe be longer than their great toe. That pisses me off. So whenever I see that, I always run in and punch the patient in the face. Yeah. So it happens a lot with patients that are very thin. So if you see somebody that's thin, chances are their second toe is longer than their first. I think there are different species of human. Yeah. So what I do is I just center up here so that, again, I want to include as much of the foot as I can, but I want to make absolutely certain that I don't clip that great toe. And just like I said with the sat band for the lumbar spine, how you have to be a little bit away from the vertebral body because it bleeds. Here, for some reason, if I park this right up against here and think, oh, I'm being oh so clever to get it exactly perfect, you're going to clip that toe. I don't know why. I don't know. So I always give it, almost if you had like half a toe's worth of space out the front, because you do not want to clip that if you can help it. Okay, so this is pretty much how we plot a forefoot, the sagittal on a forefoot. So I've got the angulation done. I've done the centering. Now I do the coverage. It doesn't matter which one you go to, whether it's I decided I moved it a little bit more anterior here. So you just go through either the axial or the coronal, and you want to make sure you cover from skin to skin. So there's the skin and you have to scroll through to make sure that you've got the skin. So I've got the skin there, and the skin comes to about there, so I'm going skin to skin. And if I see it here and go, well, there's a little skin there, I might add an extra slice just to make sure I cover it, because you don't want to clip. Because especially if it's a skin infection, the last thing you want to do is cut that anatomy off the scan. So that's what I'm looking for right there. 256, 192, one next. And make sure that my TR is correct. So 450 works for me. All right, so that's good. So I save it. Oh, I do also want to make sure that my scans are going the correct direction, which they are. Okay, this next scan's about 2 minutes long. What's bizarre here is they've got this T1 linked to the sagittal, and I don't know why they didn't do it to the T2 as well, but you won't have to worry about this protocol where you're going. So we're just going to copy. So I just go to the copy, and I want to pick this one, and it should be the same slice thickness, so I'm going to leave that alone. And you can tell that it was the same slice thickness because the signal to noise is still 100. So if it was a thinner slice, then the signal to noise ratio would drop, right? If it was a thicker slice, it would, So 256, 192, one next. Oh, it's incompatible with blurring cancellation. Ooh, that's not good. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to take off the blurring cancellation, because like that. Now, these are the advanced. These give you extra parameters that aren't built into the system, and they change based on whatever functions you have. So if I go here and I change the imaging options, these options will change. Okay? They're kind of like, this is the details right here. So if you want to go in there and really tweak the system, this is the page where you do that. I don't mess with it too often, but occasionally you'll find something that needs to be adjusted, so you just have to know where those parameters are. So next of 1, and that's good. Okay, so now this has a fat sat on it, so we're going to do a manual sat on this. So this is what this looks like. See, I've got all the way from skin to skin, and I've pretty much lined up. You see the heads of the metatarsals right here, how they line up nicely, and as you scroll through, you're scrolling through all the heads of the metatarsals. That's what the radiologist wants to see. So this next scan, all right, this next scan is going to be about 1.5 minutes. But let's just say on the other scanner, it's not working. So again, I'm going to want to fat sat this. I'm going to want to do it manually. So I have it selected, I go here and I go to manual pre-scan, and I get a box come up that looks like this. It's the exact same thing at Tempe. They didn't change it at all. So I want to go to center frequency find, and it doesn't look like much. So this is the fat peak here, and this is the water peak. It's actually 2 peaks. It picked the higher of the two, so we're going to leave it alone. Again, if I want to adjust it, let's say I want to put the line on this peak here, I'm just going to go and pick maybe about 30 and hit apply, and it's going to move it over. And I didn't go quite far enough, so I might add another 6 or so until I'm right on that peak, if I chose to do that. I don't know why. Normally it's 1 peak. I don't know why it's 2. So let's just go ahead and go back to negative 36 or so to get it back to the other peak. I'm not quite there. So let's go another 8. Yeah, all right. So you see how that moved over, and now I'm exactly right on that peak. But I'm going to want to get rid of as much of this fat peak as I can. So I go to modify options, modify RSP, and the RSP, you have to take the caps lock off, and it's CSTUN. And then it's going to integer, and it's going to give you a value of 0. You want 1. And then if you hit enter, that should drop that down a little bit more. You see how that just hit that? And all of a sudden it came back. Darn it, but that's the best you can do. So by manual pre-scanning, you have the highest probability of getting a good fat saturation. So you hit done, and then you hit scan. Okay? So you're going to have to learn to do that, because that's not something that the scanner does automatically over there. All right. So next thing, I'm going to go to the stir. 256, 192, take that down to 1. Again, there's not auto TR, maximum number of slices of 21, and I've got 20. Let's see if I can bring this down just a little bit to shorten my time. Oh. So that's the shortest I can get, right? Because when I started, I had like 20.21, and as I went down, even though I was at 20, I had like half a seat, you know, and nobody wants half a seat, so you try to get rid of as much time as you can. So 1 minute, 45 seconds. Now axials and coronals. Here's another thing. All right, let's look at our fat sat. Not that great. So you can see here, this fat saturation looks really nice, but right here, do you see all this bright signal? That's where you have bad fat saturation. What?
Refills.
Ringtone. It says fuck. It's my ringtone.
Oh, okay. So this is not ideal. This happens because of what's called the magic angle artifact, where you get this certain angle that causes this to happen. And a lot of people's toes have that angle. You can try to do things. I've seen people put like sandbags in here. I've seen people try to put small bags of saline in there to try to fix the problem. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But if you feel like, you know, playing around, you can try it. It might improve the situation. Let's run this one. Okay, this next scan is 2 minutes long. All right. Now I've got to explain something about axials and coronals on feet. Axials and coronals on feet can mean 2 different things in 2 different places. There's some facilities where an axial of the foot is sliced like this. Right? This hospital, an axial of the foot is sliced like this. Some hospitals, an axial of a foot is sliced like this. Okay? And it really depends who the radiologist is, which way they decide it is. If you're at Scottsdale, wherever, an axial of the foot is like this. At this facility, an axial of the foot is like that. You can refer to them, professionally, I refer to them as a short axis axial versus a long axis axial. This is the long axis of the foot. This is the short axis of the foot over this way, right? So when somebody comes up to you and goes, I want an axial of the foot, you can say, well, is that a long axis axial or a short axis axial? Because different facilities will do it differently, and you kind of have to be aware of that, okay? This facility, an axial is the long axis axial, like that, okay? So let's go ahead and make sure I get, again, I'm going to do my setup. Because this foot is sort of, on an angle in here, I can't really do a very good job of that. I want to find a nice mid-metatarsal right there, like that. And then because it's an axial, I'll throw down in the sagittal and get a pack like that. If I got more of smaller slices, I'd be just assuming that, hey, I'm doing a short axis axial. If they're long, if they're bigger slices like this, I can assume that they want me to do a long axis axial. So if I came to a machine and I didn't work on it before, and I clicked on it and I got this long slice like that, obviously they want a long axis axial, okay? So this I want to angle with the metatarsal. You see that metatarsal right there? I'm going to angle with it like that. I'm going to throw this up here like this. And in this plane here, I'm also going to angle with the metatarsals like that. So this is different than a hind foot, which is angled differently. Back that off just a little bit. And then so I add a bunch of slices to include the soft tissue. And again, you see how close I am on the toes here. So I find the great toe. Always try to remember which toe is the longest. And I also am going to clip the toes, so I'm going to add one more slice up there. So I've got all the toes, and then again, I want to angle this sort of with the middle of the foot like that. Just like you have the foot. It's not like there's an actual something you can angle. You just imagine the foot here and then just put a line right through, like it was a piece of cake and you want to cut it in half. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's easier to see. You see how this is basically splitting the foot right down the middle there? And if I go this way a few more times, because the hind foot is on an entirely different angle than the forefoot, okay? And we'll go over that in a minute. All right, so I've done this. I'm happy with that. One other thing here is that we've got an issue with, we've got a 0.7 phase field of view, which means that it's been brought in a little bit. From this is the way the scan would normally be. You bring it into 0.7 phase field of view, that shortens your scan time, right? The only issue is that sometimes the other foot will wrap if you do that, because it's wrapping this way. So if you have a foot that's sitting over here, it might wrap over the anatomy. So it's a risk you take if you do that. If you shove their foot all the way over as far as you can, it might not give you any signal, but it still might. So to be safe, what you can do is you can go here and then you can put a no phase wrap on here. And that's going to make certain that you don't have that problem. All right, so 256, 192, 1. All right, that's TR, looks good. Make sure that my slices are going from superior to inferior, and they are, so I can save it. Okay, this next scan is about 2.5 minutes. All right, and let's check the PD, make sure that the parameters look okay for that. What does PD stand for?
Proton density.
Right. Okay. What are your TR ranges for PDs?
2,000 to 3,500.
Good. Did you just read that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So we'll show you how to set up a coronal and we'll be done. Coronal's pretty straightforward. Same thing, we're going to angle with the metatarsal like that. I'm going to make sure that I cover the great toe in its entirety, and go out here. Again, I want to make sure that we cover that, especially if there's an infection of the great toe. Great toe is a very popular place to get an infection. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it is. Now, there's also the question as to how far you go for a forefoot. I tend to be a little generous with this. I quite often will go right to and maybe a slice into the talus like this. This is the talus right here. And then you have the calcaneus, so that you're covering the metatarsals and the distal tarsal bones, right? That's what I do. I've seen techs take it to a forefoot's to about there, but I like to be a little bit more generous about it. Any questions? All right, so. Now again, we have a wrap issue here, a potential wrap issue, but I'm not going to worry about it. Right now, 256, 192, one next, 600 even. Wow, that's pretty cool. All right, so that's how you pretty much do a forefoot. Any questions?